Let's go over adding decimals. Just like any other skill that has to do with decimals, it is incredibly important to line up the place values. That's incredibly important. So when we're lining up those place values, we're also lining up the decimal, and everything else should fall in line. That way, when we're adding them up, we're adding like parts to each other, working with these decimals. So we're adding tenths to tenths, ones to ones, tens to tens, hundredths to hundredths, to make sure that everything is nice and aligned. So our first example, we've got 13 and 58 hundredths plus 4 and 9 tenths. You'll notice that they have a different number of digits, and that's okay as long as we line up our place values, starting with those decimals. So I'm going to write this first number on top, 13 and 58 hundredths. My decimal is right here, so that means in the next number, my decimal will be directly below it. The 4 was to the left, so 4 will go directly underneath the 3. And then 9 was to the right, so 9 will go directly underneath the 5. You can fill in zeros underneath so that each number has the same number of digits. We're adding, so we're going to put our addition sign and then our equal sign there. And then just go place value by place value, just as if we didn't have those decimals there. 8 plus 0 is still 8. 5 plus 9 is 14, so the 4 goes down here and the 1 is up, so it still says 14. We just carried the 1 to the top. 1 plus 3 plus 4 gives us 8. Notice how everything is directly in line. When we added these three numbers together, our total was written directly underneath it. Same thing here, 1 plus 0 is 1 directly underneath it. Everything is nice in line. That way when we bring the decimals directly down, our answer is correct. The decimal goes straight down. So it's really important that everything is nice in line. Let's look at the next example. 10 and 5 tenths plus 3 and 68 thousandths. Again, this number is written first, 10 and 5 tenths, so we're going to write that on top. 10, decimal, 5. Our decimal needs to go directly beneath it. So 3, the only digit to the left, goes under the 0. And then in line with everything else, we'll have 0, 6, 8. Notice how this number has 2 additional digits, so we're going to put 2 zeros here just to keep everything in line, and we can put a 0 underneath there as well. You don't need to put those zeros there, but they can help make sure that you have everything nice and neatly organized. Starting always from the right, then to the left, 0 plus 8 is 8, 0 plus 6 is 6, 5 plus 0 is 5. Decimal comes straight down, whether you do it while you're adding or at the end or at the beginning. Make sure your decimal is brought down, otherwise it completely changes the value. 0 plus 3 is 3, and 1 plus 0 is 1, giving us our answer. It's always helpful to double check that you added correctly. Take your time on that addition. You don't want to make a simple mistake just because you are rushing. One more example down here in the bottom left, 18 and 9 tenths. It's written first, so we're going to put it on top. The decimal goes directly underneath. It's 2, so the 2 goes under the 8, and 12. So the 1 is underneath the 9, the 2 is the next place value over. There's nothing above the 2, and that's okay because it's in the hundredths place, and there's no digit in the hundredths place. So we can put a 0. We could put a 0 there, but again, we don't need to. We're adding, so we put the addition sign and add place value by place value, starting on the far right. 0 plus 2 is 2. 9 plus 1 is 10. So the 0 goes here, the 1 goes up. It still says 10. 1 plus 8 plus 2 gives us 11. So we write 11, carrying that tens place. And then 1 plus 1 is 2. Bringing that decimal directly down to keep everything nice and aligned. Our final one. This final example, very similar to the other ones. We just have 3 different numbers to add this time. We use the exact same process. we're going to line up all of the place values, including the decimals. But you'll notice that the third number here doesn't have a decimal. It's just the number 21. It's a whole number, and all whole numbers have a decimal at the very, very end, even if it's not shown. It's not shown because there aren't any decimal or partial values to this number, but we can still put the decimal there, and that'll be important for lining up place values. The 2 is in the tens place, just like this 1 is in the tens place. So they'll go together. 14 and 9800ths is first, so it'll go on top. Plus, again, decimals have to line up, 100ths. So lining up the tenths places, the hundredths places, plus our final one, 21 and 0, there's nothing afterwards, so our decimal lines up. We put the 21 to the left. Notice how the 1 and the 4 are both in the ones place. They're lined up. There's nothing in the ones place in our middle number we're adding, so we could put a 0 there to help keep everything in line, along with a 0 here, and fill in our zeros. Then when we add, we have 8 plus 1 plus 0, which is 9. 9 plus 0 plus 0, still 9. Our decimal comes straight down. They should all be nicely lined up. 4 plus 0 plus 1 is 5. And 1 plus 2 plus 0 is 3. So that gives us our final answer. Again, when adding decimals, we need to line up place values. Lining up our decimals is a great place to start.